the work being done. It doesn't. Okay, so you don't have a responsibility for it, or it just kind of hasn't come into the work.
Well, it hasn't had. First of all, it has virtually no. In terms of calling a spade, it offers no value.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. There may be a company so we're talking to one at the moment which is interested in, supporting youth. So, I mean, dare I say it, it might be thrown in as a set of steak knives into a deal. Don't quote me on that. But the fact of the matter is, its true commercial value is negligible.
Negligible, yeah.
It's zero.
Do you think it could be a real asset for you?
It's not an asset.
Do you think it could be? Do you think it has the potential to be?
I don't know. It would have to be. I'd keep an open mind on that, but it would need to be. It would need to be different to what it is and what it has been in terms of the last few editions.
In what way?
I don't pretend to have thought about that or have an answer to that.
Oh, okay. So do you have a sense of, in terms of kind of how, obviously you said you haven't thought about it, but in terms of difference, like in terms of straightforward delivery of product, or things like where it's hosted and things like the reach it gets, whether it gets any traction in terms of awareness and that kind of thing?
I'm not sure if I'm following your question.
So you mentioned that if the youth games was to become an asset, it would need to be very different. But in terms of that difference, would it be a difference around the actual delivery of the product itself, as in the games itself would need to be delivered differently, or it would need to be in different locations, or have a reach, which it doesn't have now?
Look, it is what it is. I don't know in terms of giving you a credible answer based on where it's staged is a consideration, but it's there for a different purpose. It's not there to be a commercial platform in its own right, so that shouldn't drive the conversation. It's there, I think, to enable the smaller Commonwealth countries to have the opportunity to play host to other fellow members of the Commonwealth, and that's a good thing. I don't think the youth games is a driver in this conversation.
That's
I think
really
the purpose of the Commonwealth Games is actually to me the critical issue, and that should drive everything else, including potential future product development, away from the games. That should stand on its own 2 feet.
Sure.
And if that can then help add a new dimension to the youth games, then that to me is a bonus, but it shouldn't be the tail wagging the dog. It's a little bit like starting with an NGO, whatever they're called, a goodwill partner, before you agree what the purpose is.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing the wrong things the wrong way around. And in terms of that purpose of the Commonwealth Games, how much did you come across, if at all, the narrative around the Indigenous reconciliation in the Gold Coast?
I
come across you at all, or not really?
I was exposed to it. And in a domestic context for the Queensland government, and I guess to an extent the Australian government, that was a choice they made, and because it was seen, well, they were funding the games, so they wanted to make a difference in their community. So it was very, by nature, inward looking, and I think my sense of that is it probably frustrated some of the ambition, because it meant that by definition it really had no resonance outside of Australia, and it had no ability to scale or profile because it was peculiar to the Gold Coast Games. So in effect, there was no legacy or momentum or equity built in the purpose as there might have been, for example, if it was a truly international purpose that could be run as a thread internationally through 71 Commonwealth nations, so that by definition where I'm pointing to is whatever we do, it ideally should have the ability to scale internationally, i.e. it should resonate in Commonwealth and non-Commonwealth countries, and it should have continuity. It shouldn't be, by definition, in my view, if everybody, in having done the work, is absolutely convinced that this is the way to go, then that view should be a strategic view rather than applied in the context of an individual games. So if you take UNICEF as an example, that could have both a domestic dimension to it in supporting the youth of Scotland, the disadvantaged youth or the underprivileged or the at-risk youth of Scotland. At the same time, it could be deployed in other Commonwealth countries. Whereas talking to a UK corporation about the relevance of Australia reconciling its Indigenous population, just like, okay, whatever.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and it's fantastic insight and hugely useful.
So scalability goes to true relevance because it is a Commonwealth of nations, not a Commonwealth of host nation. And secondly, continuity in order to build equity, but also legitimacy in actually being able to build and demonstrate impact over time.
Yeah. Okay. That's just hugely useful. Thank you. And there's the pieces that we've talked around, kind of purpose, and kind of what does the Commonwealth mean type question. Is that almost the main challenge you're facing and you face so far, or actually is that one of a number of challenges? So if we get this right, have we truly got the potential to kind of change the dial, or is there other things that are happening around, for example, the product of the games, which we obviously aren't in a position to influence, that we also need to be kind of mindful of in terms of the impact that this piece of work has? Or actually, is this a big chunk of the challenges that you face? Is this a big chunk of what it comes down to? Not wanting to put too much pressure on ourselves.
I think it's particularly relevant for when we have conversations with either UK companies that are and want to be positioned as part of the global community. And by definition, it's particularly relevant for international companies that are outside of the Commonwealth, so that they can actually build linkages into Commonwealth markets. That, in terms of within the domestic market, i.e. in the case of the UK for Birmingham, in a way, I think there's enough going on where the games, and set against the backdrop of people being familiar with, London 2012 and